They just annihilated a white boy at Chicago State. I'll never forget this. Now, this white man came to the department with superior credentials. And obviously, he was on the ball. He got retained the first year. They kept smiling at him and getting retained in the second year. But he came up for retention this third year, and they just wiped him out. He didn't have a chance at all. Forget credentials, forget letters of reference, forget teaching, everything. If you don't want you, you're gone. But there's a lot of other things working there because it had very little to do with his ability to function at the university. It was a cultural and religious war going on. Obviously, it would never hit the table, but that was what was happening. And so, any serious study of European wars, whether they're cultural, religious, or nationalistic wars, if one studies that, I think it will validate this point. And so when one analyzes the warlike nature white men exhibit among each other, only the naive and severely mentally handicapped will expect white male attitudes toward black males to be any different than they are. Do you understand my point? I'm saying white men don't like each other. You see that? There's an Anglo-Saxon proverb that states that when that two white dogs do not fight in the presence of a black dog. You see what I'm saying? So our being here in America basically has stopped America from balkanizing. That if we were not here, this would be just like Europe. We've been the glue holding America together. Well, we can't fight with them Negroes over there. All right? And of course now with the Hispanics coming in too. You see? We cannot fight. You see, we got too much to deal with. And these attitudes are historical and cultural and therefore intimate. And so the black male, white male dynamic can be best described as one of continuing unrelenting war with black males being constantly on the loser end of most battles. That's why I get so upset with black or Negro sociologists and historians buying into other people's paradigms, trying to explain the world, you see, through the eyes of Marx and Freud and their sons and daughters. At least now, Freud, they taking him on, you know. About time, boy. Even as a kid growing up reading that stuff, I know this. Look, this is not real. You say something's wrong here. Especially when he's talking about these women, I say, look, I know this is not right. I said, well, maybe he's talking about his women. You know, it might be right there. I don't know. I knew that this was just not correct. And so it's very clear that the problem with most black men in the United States is that we are fighting the wrong war. That many are fighting to get a piece of the pie, quote unquote, therefore not understand the biosocial nature of white males, which is that of conquest, domination, and self-development. Not one of sharing power or decision-making with the vanquished, i.e. former slaves. The best that most black men can hope and work for within this society is a job, which indeed has been defined by many disillusioned blacks as a piece of the pie. So you come out of University of Iowa State University, and go work for Fortune 1000 company. You know, work 40 years, you probably get to below middle management, then you get the pension fund is already used up and somebody stole it all. And then they just put you out and say, well, look, here's a gold watch made in Japan. You know. But I think we have to understand that the internal direction of black people to a large degree is destructively influenced by the ongoing black male-white male conflict. And so I'm saying that if black men and women do not understand that the conflict exists, then again, the victimization of the analysis of the problem. White men in the United States control everything of material value. This is true in all the life-giving areas such as economics, entertainment, politics, science, sports, education, law, communication, religion, real estate, and the military. Am I wrong? You see what I'm saying? But see, the point, this is what happens all too often. I said this in Enemies. Enemies came out in 1978. Let's say, I don't know if this can reach up there. This go up? Which way? Not working? Stays like, well, I can't do it. I feel all day trying to figure it out. My wife is a scientist and I can. She's a technical person. So what I was going to try to draw on the board is just a diagram. Let's say like right here. And then up here you got a point up, and then you got the top of the diagram right here. But right here, you got these points down here. So you talk to the brothers and sisters, especially the educated brothers and sisters, say, well, what the problem is? What is the problem, man? Well, the problem is communism. That's the problem, brother. Well, what do you think the problem is? Talk to the left. Well, the problem is capitalism. That's it right there. Well, what's the problem, man? Well, the problem is the Democrats, Republicans. That's the problem. Well, the problem is education. You ain't got the education that you need. Well, what is the problem? Well, the problem is the Negro's lazy. That's the problem right there. Now, you got this, and you got all these problems, all these systems and subsystems of the problem. Then you took the stem up here and say, well, where all that stem from? Well, that's white supremacist philosophy, ideology. That's the problem. You see what I'm saying? We buy into their philosophy of life, have not developed a paradigm. One of the things I call for in black men, we need to have an African American Congress where black people from all over the country elect, appoint representation. I'm not talking about going to Washington. We probably need to go to Mississippi, okay? And sit down among ourselves and begin to talk over a plan for the next 10 to 15 years. We're getting ready to move into the new millennium. The new millennium. And essentially, black people have no control of their own economic reality. None whatsoever. And so I'm saying that the neutralization of black people has been very, very effective. And how does that happen? Let me just give you a few examples, and I'm going to move towards some correctives. I think that's one corrective, but let me just give you a couple of examples, and then I'll move on. How do you neutralize the brothers, most certainly? Especially young men. Well, you create black men who will be and act white in thought, actions, and images. In effect, acculturation or seasoning. You know what seasoning is? Seasoning is like, say, visualize my hand as a cup. And say this cup represents the minds of African people in Africa. And say the cup is filled with Nile Valley water and foliage. Okay, Nile Valley is a thoroughfare feeding Africa, where, of course, agriculture was discovered. Okay? So you take the cup, you snatch the cup from Africa, and you travel across the great ocean, and each mile travel, you pour water into the great ocean. And whatever's water is left when you get to this side of the ocean, as an enslaved person, you pour the water on the shores of America, you take the mine of the cup to the Mississippi, and you fill the cup up with Mississippi mud, and you got the Negro. Okay? You got a person that does not like himself or herself, a person that's essentially always backsliding, a person got an excuse for everything for not doing that which is needed within the context of one's own community. So the seasoning is like taking an elephant out of Africa, bringing an elephant to America, putting an elephant in a circus, and making an elephant jump through hoops. That's denaturing the elephant. The elephant don't have to jump through no hoops in Africa. Okay? And so what has happened is that we've been denatured within the context of our development here. Now, let's take it to the other part. So this produces black men who consciously work in the best interest of their teachers. Therefore, no serious definition of black manhood is ever contemplated. If you ask a black man, the average black man, to define black manhood, he will start mumbling and scratching his head and tap dancing at the same time. And if you can give a definition, it's basically the same definition of a white man, but in blackface. All right. So the call for white people is to always rise above one's culture, tradition, and history if you are African American. Now I live in Chicago. Chicago is one of the most racist cities in the world. In fact, Chicago has the largest Polish community outside of Poland. In fact, nothing happens in Poland unless it goes through Chicago. Chicago has one of the largest Irish communities in the world. The Irish just retook the city. We got an idiot for the mayor of Chicago, and tell him I said it. This man can't even talk a straight sentence without stumbling. You see, over his own feet. I'm talking about Daley Jr. All right? But the Irish are in control, and whatever happens in the island, there's connection. The Jewish community in Chicago is awesome. But whatever happens in Israel, boom, they're on top of it. Now, how many of you African Americans in this room can go outside there and pick up a telephone and call a great aunt in Tanzania? Call a brother in Uganda? Call a grandmother in Nigeria or Senegal? Call a sister in Dar es Salaam? That's the crime. You see, I'm talking about our Holocaust. I'm talking about hundreds of millions lost. That's the Holocaust I'm talking about. And the sad thing about this Holocaust is that most of us don't know anything about it. Number one, that's the seasoning right there. And number two, have bought into the misuse, the abuse, the bastardization of his language to accept somebody's description of what has happened to us as a slave trade. Give me a break. As a slave trade. How are you going to rape close to 100 million people, involve them in the trafficking of people around the world, move them into everything from a bastardization of children to the separation of families to the whole-scale slaughter, and call it a slave trade? You know why it happens? It's like the lion. If you don't write your own history, you don't have one. That's it right there. And so you got everybody and their mama the expert on us. Everybody. And then when we write the history, well, we biased. You know what I'm saying? But you know what? I think that we have to understand that I want to hear the same kind of people talk about people being biased when the Jews write their book on their Holocaust. I don't hear no biasness there. You see what I'm saying? Anytime the Irish want to write about their history, I don't see no biasness. But when the brothers and sisters say, well, we need to write our own history, then, well, y'all, you can't be objective. I'm sorry. Y'all, you can't be objective. You can't be objective about this stuff. Let's get serious about this. How do you neutralize the brothers? Sisters too, but I'm talking about these men now. You drive black men out of the economic sector. Out of the economic sector, thereby making it impossible for them to take care of themselves and their families in the so-called American way. And if fruitful work is not available, most men will seek other avenues of employment, and so therefore a life of quote-unquote crime or the underground economy is the next step for many of them. Let's talk about criminals. Let's talk about some people ripping off the savings and loan industry. Let's talk about I tell my students, look, if you want to be a criminal, don't be out here snatching no purses. Don't be out here no strong arm robber. If you want to be a criminal, you get you a law degree, get you an MBA. If you want to be a serious criminal, you get this other stuff. And so it becomes very clear to me is that Bush is protecting Neo-Bush. You go to war, and this whole savings and loan thing is put on the back. And what Milken just got his sentence reduced to 3 years? Yes. You know what? The truth hasn't been told about that. It's coming out. It is coming out. They said this whole junk bond thing was like on a piece of thread. Like it was nothing holding this thing up at all. And the truth has not hit yet, but it will hit. It will hit. And so you drive the brothers into the underground economy. And the problem is the difference between, say, a conscious brother and an unconscious brother is an unconscious brother, again, would essentially wreak havoc in his own community. But a conscious brother understands that essentially the reason that the community exists at the level it does, not because on black crime, because of white on black crime. And so a conscious brother will go take it from those who took it from the world. Neutralization. The prison system, I talked a little bit about that. But let me just talk about this fourth neutralization, and I'll just kind of go on. You supply black men with unlimited negative options, such as, and these are incorrectly defined as freedoms, okay? You always get this. Such as drugs, nightlife, alcohol, unrestricted sex. You know, brothers say, well, I got the freedom to do what I want to do. Yeah, you got the freedom to self-destruct all you want to. The use of drugs or other stimulants have seriously affected the black community in a destructive manner. The constant search for fun, for pleasure, or the next high is the best example of an immature enslavement. Who said that the brother and the sister got a party every weekend? Then you spend from Monday to Friday looking at what you're going to party in, buying it from somebody else outside the community, and wonder why you ain't got no money. What we have to understand is the difference between freedom and liberation. Nelson Mandela and Winnie Mandela talk about liberation. When they say liberation, people are not liberated unless you can feed yourself, clothe yourself, house yourself, defend yourself, define yourselves, employ yourselves. That's liberation. All right. I got about 4 or 5 other things in terms of neutralization, but I want to kind of move on and just kind of bring this to some where I think are some minor correctives. See, I think that at some point it's crucial that we take hold of our own lives. And taking hold of one's own life is very difficult in a culture that values property over life. This is the same culture that developed the concept of planned obsolescence and throwaway underwear. Many black people in this country are wards of the state. Therefore, it is mandatory that African Americans develop survival and developmental strategies. We must be able to disconnect from the oppression around us, whether it's political, economic, or more personal, coming from friends, family members, or co-workers. Negative people always will want to involve others in their defeated lives. Disconnected. Look, I said that white supremacy or racism is alive and well. All right? Now, very few people in the world can talk as bad about white people as I can. I'm a poet. All right? Now that means very little, because we came up with sticks and stones may hurt my bones, but names will never harm me. All right? So at some point that means very little if you're not trying to, at one point, build the institutions that would dislodge racism, while at the same time confirming and affirming one's own worldview. And that's why it's so crucial that you recognize that each of you have a sphere of influence. And that sphere of influence can be very negative or very positive. It's really up to you. And so it's very important that we begin to understand that we got to be aware of people trying to make their history, their traditions, their culture yours. Beware of people trying to put their troubles and fears onto you. We're all prisoners of bad habits. And people in the West generally do not die natural deaths. We kill ourselves in any number of ways. Bad nutritional practices, lack of exercise, unchecked stress, obesity, alcohol, drug addiction, smoking, suicide, poverty. So learn to say goodbye to negative people and situations is extremely difficult if one has grown up with such. Destructive behavior is learned from one's environment, i.e. culture. Bad habits are acquired, and the habitual mind is very dangerous to the developing self. This brings me to the bone of change. The ability to look at oneself honestly and design a personalized program for change. And this program must include inner exploration, inner investigation, contemplative solitude, professional consultation, and inner transformation. And when I say professional consultation, I may mean just talking to your grandmother or your grandfather. In order to effectively deal with the weakness needs to be acknowledged. All people have inner selves. However, most do not discover their inner power until it's too late. Most people are transfixed in the past, hypnotized by past defeats or failures, and often they do not understand the sources of denial at a personal or professional level. We don't know where we want to go because we don't know where we've been, nor do we know where we are now. And I'm not talking about a geopolitical definition, but one that connects us to each other regardless of the systems that do it around the world. How many times you walk around this campus and black people cross the street before they even say hello to each other? Forget a smile. Okay? Forget a handshake. Forget a hug. Forget that. You hug some of these brothers and sisters around here, start talking about child molestation or sex pervert or something. And so it's very clear is that at some point we have got to begin to recognize that we have got to communicate with each other. Why is it we find it much easier to communicate with people outside of the race, outside of the culture, than communicate with each other? I think that's a very important question. You know, most people have experienced rejection. And therefore, many people build their lives around not being accepted. And the term of burden is a frequent reaction to being black in a white-controlled world where one is rejected even before one is able to see the rejecter. Learning what not to do can lead one to what to do. However, that's like going through the back door to open the front door. The inner self determines the outer self. Walking away from destruction, saying no to foolishness and silliness, refusing handouts and ridding oneself of debilitating habits is the road to wholeness. Yet there remains an inner emptiness in most of us. We live in a culture that respects, protects, praises, and rewards people with power. And this power is generally defined as a domination of people, the domination of things, ideas, resources, and property. Therefore, we find ourselves dominated by the people who are able to play the power game the best. The fight or quest for power as a norm and ultimate definer dehumanizes the seeker of truth. A culture built upon the ownership of people and things works against harmonious relationships and pits people against one another for the control of each other. Returning the self becomes even more difficult, especially one that has never been there. And in a wasteful, property-orientated culture, there ceases to be a self, there are just things and others. Therefore, the inner or autonomous self is backseat to the life of acquisition and mystifying good life. Chattel enslavement in the United States has been replaced with material and mental enslavement. We are more concerned about whose name you wear on your butt than around what you can contribute to the world. And so when your world is defined as a result of the clothes you wear or where you live or the car you drive or the type of job you have, that means essentially if that's taken away from you, you have no definition. And so it seemed to me that we have to begin to move toward those very clear secrets of life. And the first secret of life is what? One, self-knowledge. That the Ethiopians have a saying, a cat may go to a monastery, but she still remains a cat. Africans brought to America are still African. Yes, we've been changed, but knowing oneself is key to knowing and understanding others. If a person hides from self-understanding and self-knowledge, his or her life will be built upon a bed of quicksand that promises slow but certain confusion, pain, and death. All people, if they are to develop, must ask the simple and correct question to define life. Why are we here? Where do we come from? What is our purpose in life? Are we here to serve others or ourselves? Self-knowledge leads to self-understanding, which is the path to becoming a whole person. Another African proverb states, quote, wood may remain 10 years in the water, but will never become a crocodile, end quote. So first find the reason for your own existence and conditions. Respect learning, seek to be world-class at everything that you do. And the best way to do this is through study, work, and more study and more work. There are three things I tell my students on the first day of class. One, you all have A's. Why? Because I knew that when you came out of your mother's womb, if you didn't have a biological problem or genetic defect, then you came out at genius level. And that if you're not functioning now at the level that you should be, it's because of the culture. I'm saying essentially that black men did not come out of their mother's womb snatching purses. That the culture created that. And so as far as I'm concerned, you have an A. And it's up to you to lose the A. Number two, what I tell the students is that whatever excuse you have for not completing this work, I want to hear it now because it's not going to fly after the day. That's it, right now. And the third thing I tell students is that the language that you speak, which is African American English or black English, is legitimate, it's right, it's correct. Why? Because you're able to communicate with your mother and your father, your grandparents, you're able to communicate with the people in your community. And you don't have to apologize for your language. However, when you come here at Chicago State or Iowa State, you've got to learn another language. It is a language of academia. You got to learn how to speak it, you got to learn how to write it if you're going to get through this institution. It is clear as that. But you know what? When you get out of here, you got to learn another language. I don't care where you go. Whatever industry you go into, you got to learn the language of that industry. When I went into business 25 years ago, I had to learn the language of commerce. I could not walk into the bank and say, look, bro, give me some money. All right? I had to develop a business plan, had to learn to talk that language, I had to learn more about that industry than they knew in order to essentially maneuver in terms of building businesses in this community. All that, that's what we're saying, that we have to become enlightened people. And part of that is having self-knowledge. Self-knowledge gives us a type of strength, the type of posture, where we don't have to be backseat to anybody in the world. To family. Family. When you see a dissolution of black families, you see a dissolution of black people. That strong families produce strong nations. That people are shaped by other people and culture. All people have had mothers and fathers. However, not all mothers and fathers are responsible. Therefore, black families are undergoing a transition. If one is asked to list the 5 most important ingredients for the development of a good and productive person, family would be at the top of the list, far ahead of money, cars, clothes, and fame. I'm saying you got middle-class black families out here got a little bit of money, which is still chump change, but they think they got some money, and their children are crazy. You see, they can't even control their own children because they buying into Dr. Spock and everybody else. It's pop psychology around how they should raise their children. Okay? And what happens is, they're so busy out here making all the money they can make in the world, that what happens is that they're going to end up repairing broken adults. Because the children are not getting the kind of nurturing. And I'll talk about this in the book at great length, as opposed to raising. You know, we raise our children rather than nurture our children. You see. And as a result of that, we find that it's not working for those who even stay together. Which gets to the major point in family, is that families is crucial, is key. And when you begin, and that's why I suggest to young people, don't start families early. Wait till late. And especially these young women come out of these institutions, you need to get out here and travel. You need to see other parts of the world other than Iowa. You need to really get out of the country, if possible. And travel. Go to Africa. Go to Asia. Don't tell me, well, I ain't got the money. Well, look. You got the money for other things. You know, we save and, for what we want to do. Okay? I took my first trip to Africa in 1969. I had 2 pair of pants, 1 jacket, 1 suitcase, and whatever few books I had. It was important for me to get to Africa. So I got there, walked across North Africa. That's why I know a little bit about this region. I went in 1969. I went to Algiers for the first Pan-African Congress. Algiers went all up into Morocco, Fez, Rabat, Casablanca. Well, I don't need to get into it. But the point I'm trying to make is that travel. I've been to Africa over 12 times since then. The point I'm trying to make is crucial that you travel, that you get out of America. Because you cannot get a perspective that's going to give you another worldview one level just by reading books. You need to experience the world. Travel is so important. Travel. And so family, in terms of family, the key word is quality. Especially, we aren't even taught how to pick mates. Well, she looked good. Yeah. She might be the finest thing out there. But you know what? 6 months every night in the bed with this fine thing who's a balloon head or a pea head, after 6 months, it's gone. You see? It is gone. After that, you'd be going after another pea head. She might look good. And same with the sisters. Same thing, looking at these balloon head brothers. All right? All you can do is play basketball. All right? The white boy give you all the hoops you want. All of them. And so it becomes very clear to me is that quality in the selection, quality in the doing, quality in the interpretation, quality in the study, quality in the vision, quality in the sharing. Quality is key. In fact, when you begin to carry your life in a quality fashion, I don't care if you run up against a white man who invented racism. He gotta back up. Because you're not going to stand for his stuff, you see. Quality. Always carry yourself in a quality fashion. Quality in the argument, quality in the debate. Quality in the understanding. Quality is key. And my wife, I talk about all over the world. I met my wife 20-some odd years ago. I mean, she had come out of the University of Illinois at some ridiculous age, had a master's degree from University of Chicago, teaching one of the local colleges. And I met her in a community center teaching children. And we began to interact. It became very clear to me that this was a serious woman. 21 years old. And she said to me, I'll never forget, she said, by the time I get these students at the university level, it's almost too late. It's gone. What we got to do, we have got to come back to preschool education and early childhood education. And what she also said to me, she said, well, look, we have got to do this, and I think that this is my mission in life, but I also know that by doing this, I'm not going to get the kind of rewards that I would receive working at the university level. And what happened is she left that job, tenure track, came back, we built New Concept Development Center in Chicago, one of the major independent black schools in the country. You haven't heard about us, you've heard about Marva Collins, but our population is 3 times what Marva Collins has. The reason you haven't heard about us is because we don't teach Shakespeare. We teach Ayikwe Amma, right? Bessie Head, Sterling Brown, Gwendolyn Brooks. That's why you don't hear about us. And so, I think that we have to make choices. When she made her choice, her family ostracized her, thought she had lost her mind. The best education in the world, quote unquote, and here she's leaving a job to go back work in the black community at $400 a month. This was 1971. And I hadn't asked her to marry me. That was what, when she decided to make that move, that was 5 years down the line. So it wasn't on me. This was her decision. She made me stand up another level. I came out of a situation where I was as sexist and male chauvinist as the bone. She's the one that taught me. And when we got married, it's very clear that if our home was going to work, how can I tell this woman, look, okay, baby, you need to stay home and cook my food and wash my clothes and take care of these children, and I go out there and fight the white boy. That don't make no sense. Here, especially when you begin to realize that all the talent and all the knowledge that she possessed, and that what happens is that when brothers do not want to function with women as equals, then that's your problem. You see what I'm saying? That's not the sister's problem. You got a problem. How can we stand up and say, well, the sister emasculated me when it's a white man that snatched you from a continent and sprinkled you around the world? They're going to talk about the sister. Give me a break. Give me a break. And I grew up with pimps and hoes slamming Cadillac doors. I know the life. I know the life. I lost my mother at 16 years old. She was an addict. She was a drug addict. I grew up in the life. My sister had her first child at 14 years, had a second child at 16, had a third child at 17, had a fourth child at 20, had a fifth child at 21, had a sixth child at 23, never been married. Totally in the life. Don't tell me about the streets. The streets is nothing that will kill you out there. And I'm saying at some point, you got to transcend that and say, well, look, I'm not going to allow that to happen. But you got to be able to stand up and stand tall and recognize essentially we are not using the most sophisticated computer in the world, which is the brain. We use less than 25 to 30% of it. And so it's very clear that the family is that when brothers and sisters make decisions to get married, they got to stay there. They got to stay together. Because when you bring these children in the world, the children do not make the decision to come in the world. We made the decision. 3, community. Community is the result of strong families. A community will have those things and sustain the families. What? Houses of worship, schools, libraries, businesses, and so forth. 4, avoiding stress. Most people worry too much about things they can't change and control anyway. This is why strong families and strong communities are necessary. They help insulate the families, people. I give about 27 ways to deal with stress in the book, but I'm not going to go into it now. But let me just move to 5, critical thinking. Critical thinking. Very some of our people taught thinking skills. Early in childhood, we're told to use our minds, but how to use them is generally left up to the individual. And so the answers to the stresses of life, to modern life, For the average person have been condensed to 30-minute sitcoms and 1-hour dramas. Solutions to most minor illnesses can be found in 30-second commercials, and most psychological problems are now handled by radio show talk hosts that rhyme. So thinking for oneself is not easy, especially if it has been done by somebody else all one's life. So the mind is often captured by the insignificant. We generally have been taught to listen, to do, and believe without question. It becomes easier to believe than think. Thinking requires introspection, investigation, silence, definition, contemplation, challenges, competition, instruction, and study. Thinking also demands that a person be curious about the world, its people, its animals, its vegetation, and its existence. Most people who think critically about the world are doers in this world. They are problem solvers. Thinkers become teachers, doctors, judges, professors, poets, writers, ministers, artists, musicians, designers, and one going on and on. So thinking is very important. 6, discipline and motivation. I know most of you know about discipline, so I don't really need to go into this. But what motivates you? Are you being motivated for just to get a better job? If coming to Iowa State is just to get a better job, then you are selling yourself short. That essentially we have got to begin to think a little higher than that. And so our motivation at some point must be the liberation of our people. And I talked about liberation earlier. And I think that when we begin to look at our communities, we see that we are not a liberated people by any stretch of the imagination. The people that are now controlling the economics of our community don't even look like us, you see. 7, personal health plan, eating correctly and exercising. I got a few pages in there, so, I'm saying that most of us, we find ourselves ill so often because we don't practice any type of good health. The average brother, 25, 26 years old, can't even run up these stairs without getting tired. Can't do 3 push-ups without breaking his arm. You must understand that good health is important, which requires understanding how not only to eat properly, but how to combine food properly. It's so important that you've got to study nutrition, and half these doctors don't even know anything about nutrition at all. I haven't seen the AMA come out here against McDonald's or Arby's or Wendy's or all this grease out here. I haven't seen the AMA just recently just taking a stand on smoking. It just became so obvious. You just kill yourself smoking, so we got to take a stand now. But what about to stand against alcohol? What about to stand against everything from all these chemicals used out here in terms of producing this food? 8, spiritual service and reciprocity. Black people grow up in the church in many cases, so you have part of this. But we must always seek answers to the reason for life. The religion one practices is not as important as the practice itself. Most world religions are based upon doing good in this world. Beware of cults. Beware of any philosophy of life that makes human beings into deities and places man or woman at the center of the universe. Seek a way of life that's non-conflictual, but is self-protective. Study all spiritual paths, study all religions. Pay particular attention to the African spiritual knowledge. Learn to meditate and try to bring quietness into your life. Study the works of the great spiritual thinkers. Bring more contemplation into your life. Beware also of the misuses of the patriarch in all world philosophies. Reciprocity is a common African value. It's the giving and the receiving should be balanced. I think that most certainly when men and women together, that if somebody's giving 75% and the other person is only receiving 25%, then there's an imbalance there. It's not going to work. You have to balance it up. Well, my wife is an expert in terms of curriculum development, early childhood education, so I keep learning from her. I keep trying to get my stuff together around listening to her. You see. And where I may be an expert and knowledgeable in other areas, I share it with her. And that's where we run our house, you see. 9, culture and action. Well, we have this Black Month, which should be Black Year. But the point is that this is culture and action. But I think we have to be aware of the other days in our lives are important. The holidays of King and Malcolm and Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman, and one can go on and on. Number 10, self-reliance and ambition. I need to spend just a couple of minutes here because I think it's important that we understand that America was built on the backs of African people who were enslaved by whites. And the greatness of this country was made possible by the free or slave labor provided by African people for over 300 years. If I had 4 million people to work free, I could build a country too. You see what I'm saying? I'm not in awe of white people. I respect them, but I'm not in awe of them. You see? And I think it's very important to understand that the education that most black people have received in this country has been prepared them to work for other people. So if you're indeed the best and the brightest, then at some point, it seems to me that the challenge is not to go out here and work for another group of white people, but how do you begin to at some point challenge these people in the economic sphere? All the people try to do it. Just about everybody in this room, I don't even know half of you, I'm sure everybody in this room on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis uses something made in Japan. The Japanese don't care what you call them. You can call them anything you want to call them as long as you're driving Toyota and Honda. Listen to Sony. Almost 100% of the VCRs are made in Asia. And quiet as kept, the major people who will benefit from this Middle East thing will be the Japanese and the Germans. They reshaping the whole economic map. This European community too, they scared to death of the Japanese. And you haven't got to the Koreans yet. You see what I'm saying? That we have to begin to understand other people understand the economic war. The Japanese live on an island not even the size of Montana. They can't even produce enough food to feed themselves. They import almost 45-50% of their food. But they will make you any kind of toy you want. I don't care what it is. But how many of us in here on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis use anything made in Africa or Africa America other than hair oil and cosmetics? Now that is the question right there. You see what I'm saying? I know what's going on in Africa. I'm saying that Africans talk as much smack as I can. But the point is, it means nothing. It means absolutely nothing until you start producing. It means nothing. You go to Africa and you want to leave crying. I'm serious. The last time I went to Tanzania, walked through Dar es Salaam, I wanted to cry. Nigeria is supposed to be the hope of Africa. As corrupt as you want to get. So I'm saying, look, I criticize us too. I'm saying that, look, we are not perfect. The point I'm trying to make is that we have got to get out there and hit it at another level. You see. In business, we have got to get and deal in small business. This whole cottage industry, medium-sized businesses, we got to build businesses. Sure, I wanted to just be a poet. I wanted to just write poems, talk to sisters. You see what I'm saying? It was clear to me, especially after, you get out here trying to work out here with these people and they don't like you anyway, that you have got to begin to forge a way where you can make a living and begin. We have 51 people working full-time for the Institute of Public Education. So that means every 2 weeks you got to hit a payroll, all right, that's in excess of $60,000. Now, this is a small institution. And the only way we can do that is that we got to produce. And so our production comes in Third World Press, which is one of the largest black publishing companies in the country, if not the world now, and through our bookstores. We just opened the 4th bookstore last week. And our goal is to open 2 new bookstores a year, at least to the year 2000. And we'll be coming to Iowa soon, too.
Thank
you. 11. And so I just want to kind of just one last word on this. Yes, you may have to come out of here and work for white people for 2, 3 years, 5 years to get some of this debt. But start thinking, start planning now with other people, how can you go back into your own communities or even tangential to your communities and where you can begin to not only produce for that community, but produce for the world. You see? Because one of the major forces in terms of where we sell books in Europe and Africa, and even now in Asia. Okay, creative production. Enjoy life. One of the real problems of black struggle all too often is like the brothers and sisters come in black struggle, they don't think you'll never be happy. Always want to, just always angry, always want to fight. You see what I'm saying? that you have got to understand that life is too short to spend in front of television sets, to spend out here just spinning your wheels, reinventing the wheel, that you've got to enjoy yourself. You've got to be aware of burnout. You've got to understand that, learn art, music, write, do those things that make you happy. But at the same time, recognize that you've got to be organized. You've got to work in some organized faction. And the first organization is the family. Extended family, community, and so forth. Creative production. And then finally, adapting to change. The world is changing quickly. We not only have to adapt to change, we have to be able to initiate change. You see? And it's so crucial that we do that. And a person need not only be able to see it coming, we must at some point be able to change the course. And let me just kind of end with this. That, and I get this all the time, so I'm going to kind of, the question is, do I think all white people are racist, evil, bad, and corrupt? No. I'm not going to make the same mistake they made about us. You see what I'm saying? But those who are clearly the majority. It's as simple as that. That there may indeed be good white people in the world, but they don't run nothing. You see? So if I spend all my time trying to find the good white people, I'm going to get whooped every time. Because those who are racist and who are chauvinists and who are essentially sick, they're running it. And so I think it's very clear that we have to be involved in the retaking of the world and reshaping it. So where we can come out saying yes to life, choosing big life over big death, saying yes for those that want every woman a man a woman, every person education and willing work, for all people, family, food, clothing, shelter, love, frequent smiles, and children swimming in glorious happiness. For every elder a home, blooming health, few words, good teeth, and fun-filled thank yous. For all people, liberating culture, the full love of laughing children who have been bathed in the caring eyes of family, friends, nation. For all people, the inner glow that radiates peace and wisdom, the confirming smile of knowledge known, the confident walk of music heard, the quiet presence of having